With various kings, dukes, and others vying for the Iron Throne, the common folk are often forgotten. Life during wartime is cruel. When an army travels through, they could plunder and kill anyone in their way. The Brotherhood Without Banners was created by those who want to make sure that the common people aren't forgotten. Thanks for stopping by Big Top Gaming. My name's Brian, and I'm back at it with A Song of Ice and Fire. So, for those who've been watching the channel for a while will notice that I took quite an extended break from producing content for the game. I also kind of pulled away from the game a bit too, and not for any reason due to the game's performance or function, but my life locally was getting a lot more busy, and my meta is not... or the meta that I play in the most is about an hour away from me, so it wasn't easy for me to be able to get out and get games in, and the local area that I play in didn't have much interest in A Song of Ice and Fire, but that interest has kind of started to stoke back up, and I put my Bolton army on the table for a couple intro games with those folks, and all the passion that I had for the game when I stopped making content has just kind of flooded back into me, so I'm very interested to start talking about the game again and getting more games on the table. And I hope that my schedule permits me to travel outside of just my local area to start playing. But I wanted to start off with coming back to talk about the Brotherhood Without Banners tactics deck. The Brotherhood Without Banners are the next faction that will be coming out for A Song of Ice and Fire, the miniatures game. And they're mostly comprised of common folk. Like peasants, farmers, people who've come back from the dead multiple times, zombie Stark people, and wizards, normal folks. And the tactics deck brings a lot of that to bear with how they function. So let's go ahead and take a look at each one of the cards individually. The first card up in the deck is Sudden Retreat. This triggers when an enemy completes a melee attack. Target the defender. They perform one retreat action. If this targets your commander's unit, you may reroll any retreat distance dice. So we've seen this card before in the Targaryen standard tactics deck, and I believe Robb Stark also has this card as well. So being able to run away when you get hit by something is always good. I mean, your opponent might be considering that, or might be thinking that they're going to stay in a prolonged combat, like if they start the round by taking the swords and fight one of your units, and then you play this so you can run away and then charge them in a flank or something like that. I mean, they can reposition by pivoting or whatever, but hopefully you've got some other combat units to be able to set the stage to where whether your opponent pivots once you retreat or not, they're going to be giving up some kind of flank charge somewhere. I think that Sudden Retreat is a really good card when you're trying to manipulate the table and force your opponent to make some difficult decisions. Borrowing from the Free Folk, we have Regroup and Reform up next. This triggers at the start of a friendly turn. You target 2 friendly infantry units in long range of each other. Remove up to 4 models from one of these units, and restore that many wounds to the other. You may then move 1 attachment from one of these units to the other, replacing 1 model as usual, and keeping usual attachment restrictions, or switch to friendly attachments in those units. Regroup and Reform is very, it's a flavorful inclusion for me, because I look at it as though, one unit saying, like, they're doing that farmer thing where it's like, we have plenty, so we will provide for you because you don't have as much as we do type of thing. It just, that's the way I read it, at least when it is in the framework of the Brotherhood Without Banners. It's just a little flavor thing that I enjoy. But with this faction specifically, I think it's very interesting. I've always looked at Regroup and Reform as a extremely versatile card in that you can save attachments from dying when their unit gets low and throwing them into another unit where they might be needed, especially like when you look at trading because they might be needed elsewhere. Long range is a pretty good distance in this game to be switching attachments around. So if you have an attachment that's got a very specific purpose and that purpose is not readily in front of them, you can then flop that attachment over to a unit that is in a situation where they're needed, and then they can apply pressure that way. I think that one of the unique things about this faction is that they can bring units from other factions, Stark being one of them. So this can make it so that you can have one unit attack at better ranks if it's taken some damage, but if you're doing something like taking House Umber Berserkers, you can make them more deadly by taking ranks away from them. And since this triggers at the start of a friendly turn, your opponent might think they have you blocked out from some healing shenanigans, but you'll always have this in your back pocket ready to roll. I'm a massive fan of Regroup and Reform, and really happy to see it here. Our first new to the game card for this tactics deck is Knights of the Hollow Hill. This triggers when a friendly combat unit is targeted by an enemy ability or tactics card. That unit performs one morale test. On a success, cancel the effect of the ability or tactics card. Then that unit may perform a 3-inch maneuver action. So I really enjoy the Knights of the Hollow Hill. Whenever I can mess with what my opponent's trying to do to me, I appreciate that greatly, especially when they have plans to set something cool up for that. Like, think about trying to cancel a bribery when a Lannister player is throwing that against you, or if your opponent's trying to set up for a really nice charge and they play a tactics card that targets the unit that they're going for. Not only do you stop them from getting that effect, but you're also going to get a 3-inch maneuver action if you want to get out of charge range or slip out of their line of sight, reposition some archers. There's just a lot of, again, versatility in this deck, and I think that's kind of one of the overarching themes that comes with the Brotherhood Without Banners tactics deck is versatility, and the ability to stop your opponent but then get a bonus on top of that is huge. Not to mention there is the morale test, which I think a lot of people will look at as a negative, saying that you have to perform the morale test, but with us being able to pull from Baratheon units as well, we can get a R'hllor unit in here. And there are some faith-based mechanics that are attached to some of the Brotherhood Without Banners models, and who knows what they'll release in the future if they're going to have more units with specific faith-based mechanics. So I think Knights of the Hollow Hill is a fantastic inclusion for this particular faction. Another bespoke card for the Brotherhood is the Forgotten Fellowship. This triggers at the start of any round. You target one friendly combat unit, it performs one march or retreat action, then becomes weakened. So I like this a lot in the same way that I like Knights of the Hollow Hill, in that it allows you to play the table and the game at the same time, which sounds weird when these are mostly just considering movement. But being able to manipulate the table to get into positions where you weren't expected to be is really powerful. But then on top of that, being able to roll in this retreat business means that your opponent could start the round with a plan, like taking the swords to punch the one unit that they happen to be in combat with. But if you retreat right away, they don't have that availability anymore for that decision that they took, and have to reconsider how they're going to do things. Whereas they had a whole turn of shuffling their hand and figuring all this stuff out to say, this was my best plan of action, and not really have the opportunity to plan for this. It can cause them to make some mistakes if they're not quick to make those decisions, right? The weakened token is a bummer, but we have two things going for us with this faction. One of them is that we have Hot Pie, so whenever his unit activates, they get to remove a condition token, and this isn't at the start of an activation card or anything, it's at the start of any round. That's going to be helpful for us, but we also have a lot of access to gang up in this faction, so that's going to give us +1 to hit, so when you're re-rolling dice with gang up bonuses, it's not the biggest problem in the universe. Sometimes you might even want the rerolls if you're fishing for crits, which I know your opponent's not going to do for you, so that's probably not the most strategic way to employ this thing. But at any rate, I think the Forgotten Fellowship is a phenomenal card for this faction. Whether you use it early or late, it's going to get you to where you want to be, and I absolutely love the way that this deck is shaping up so far. Next up, we have Take Up the Sword. I think this is unique to the Brotherhood, but I'm catching up with things when it comes to tactics cards, so I'm not 100% sure if this exists elsewhere. But this triggers when a friendly combat unit activates. That unit performs one morale test. On a success, you choose one of the following. Either it restores 1 wound, +1 additional wound for each of its destroyed ranks, or target one enemy combat unit in long range. It becomes panicked and weakened. So again, we've got another versatile card. Mostly would be seen as a more aggressive card, even though restoring wounds is considered more of a defensive thing, like a proactive, I guess it's a reactive thing to try and be proactive about keeping your unit around. But allowing you to restore enough wounds to get an additional rank so that you can fight better is aggressive. And being able to put panicked and weakened on your opponents, I think that maybe might be a more defensive feel. So like Take Up the Sword means like you're kind of taking up the sword to defend yourself. But At any rate, Panicked is an aggressive token, Weakened is a defensive one. So I think that Take Up the Sword is just a really fun card that can play different aspects of the game, where if you need a unit to stick around, you can have it stick around. If you need to make sure that your opponent's unit doesn't do as much when it comes in and you exert maximum damage on a panic test, it's strong there too. Again, another card that we need to pass a morale test in order to execute, but we can be choosy in that we can make sure that we're not using our lower morale units to play this card on, and we have, again, more faith-based mechanics that can make this a more of a benefit that we're taking a morale test than a negative, especially in the case where you need to use those faith tokens to get aggressive bonuses, and then you're getting that faith token when you might not have had any when you were getting ready to swing with that unit. So strong card all around, versatile and fun. I like it. The next Brotherhood card is borrowed from Stannis, the One True King, and that's going to be Azor Ahai. This triggers when a friendly unit is performing a panic test after rolling dice. This unit can only suffer a maximum of 1 wound from failing this test. If this targets your commander's unit, it passes the test instead, and all enemies engaged with it become weakened. So here we've got a reactive, kind of defensive card for the Brotherhood. We can definitely save this for units that have lower morale, and if they fail it by with a big number on that panic die, that would end up wiping them maybe. Being able to only suffer 1 wound from that is pretty strong, but this is also really good with faith-based commanders or commanders that are in faith-based units. Being able to automatically pass a test and guarantee you're getting that faith token is huge. And then weakening everything around you is also, well, I guess weakening everything engaged with you, not around you. But that is also pretty beneficial to making sure that your commander can slog it out and destroy whatever they happen to be in base contact with. So this is not a flashy card, it's just a good card for this faction. The final card for the Brotherhood is another unique one called But the Realm Remains. This triggers at the start of any turn. You target 1 friendly combat unit and attach this card to them until the end of the game. Each time a friendly infantry or cavalry unit is destroyed, place 1 order token on this card. At the start of a friendly turn, you may remove 1 order token from this card. If you do, restore 3 wounds to this unit. While this card has an order token, the attached unit may not gain condition tokens. So this card's pretty strong, or not, I don't know if it's like competitively strong, but it feels really good for me. I enjoy the way that it reads. Like, you have in this faction units that they're not meant to die, but you expect them to get destroyed throughout the game, like your Peasants Levy, where they've got a 6+ save and a 6+ morale. They're not really long for this world, but they have gang up. So the way you can look at this card, I like to look at it from all the weird disruptive angles that it can put into the game. And one of them is that if my opponent is engaged with a strong combat unit that happens to be also engaged with my peasants to give me that gang up bonus, they might want to kill the peasants because it's low-hanging fruit, and the more they try to attack the stronger combat unit, the more that gang up bonus is going to keep stacking. But if I trigger this or play this card at the start of their turn before I would anticipate them to attack that peasant unit, they're really going to have to think hard about whether they want to kill that peasant unit or not. Is the gang up bonus worse than a unit being able to have 3 wounds back into it on tap? And while it's got that token, when it doesn't need those wounds, it can't gain any condition tokens. Like if my opponent's needing to rely on vulnerable or panic in order to get through that unit, they really will have to think hard about whether they want to kill that peasant unit or not. And as the game goes on, you're going to lose combat units anyway, so you can put this out early, you can put it out late, and it should be fine too. I just think that But the Realm Remains is a strong attachment card that forces my opponent to have to think about what they're trying to do if I can set things up right. Otherwise, it's just a good card to have out in the beginning because your opponent's going to want to kill your models off of objectives or off of table quarters, and every time they do that, you're going to make sure that the unit that you have with this card is going to stick around and be a pain in the butt for a long time. Like, it's really brutal to not have to deal with to not have to deal with condition tokens at all. It's just so strong. I feel like But the Realm Remains is just a phenomenal card. my overall reaction to the Brotherhood Without Banners deck is pretty strong, or at least good. You know, like I feel that this is a fairly good deck, and it works for me in the way that I play the game. I really like to exert decisions on my opponent. They're not like gotcha moves, but they force my opponent to be agile in their thinking pattern, and that they'll have a plan for something, but then I can kind of pull the rug out from under them and make them have to choose a new pattern to follow instead of the one they've had planned for the last 5 minutes or so. I think that the tactics deck is versatile, but the only like downside for that is I kind of want the whole tactics deck in my hand at all times, because there will be points where some of these cards aren't going to fit well into the projected game plan at that particular time. I feel like the middle and the like, there's definitely things I want at the beginning and the middle and the end, and I will not have them all at the same time. Like I can't. I think a lot of tactics decks can say that, but I feel like the reactivity and situational advantage that you can get from each one of these cards is not exacerbated, but I kind of want to say that, where it's very important that they have these things when they need them. But I also, I'm kind of biased in that I feel like I enjoy the common people theme. Like I enjoy that they're just regular people in quotes that are just fighting in a world where there's people who have way too much money and way too much time on their hands to be fighting these crazy battles over who's going to be the one who sits on a throne, or they're fighting like dragons, White Walkers, all this stuff. It's just like I really enjoy the idea of the lay person being able to come in, and I know they've got some characters in there for sure, but I just enjoy this faction a lot, and their tactics deck really resonates with me and how I want to play the game. So when this faction comes out, I'm really looking forward to putting it on the table. Outside that, I appreciate you sticking with me till the end of the video. I definitely take suggestions. I'm a little bit late to the game here in talking about the Brotherhood Without Banners, as most of the information about them has been released already. But as I said, my flow of passion is such that I just wanted to be able to talk about something, and this was what I chose to do. So if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments section. And I just look forward to making more videos and getting back into A Song of Ice and Fire. I feel like I've been away for far too long, and it's just a really exciting time to come back to the game and explore all the new stuff that's hit with the Season 5 update. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.